code quality won't matter if we're dead. So you jump off a cliff and you start quickly building the plane, throw the Cessna away and build an Airbus, right? Anyone can build a bridge that stands, but you need a real engineer to build a bridge that barely stands.
Hopefully juniors can see that in seniors.
Always make sure that the junior is driving and the senior is watching, not the other way around. Join a team as early as possible. A small trick that I learned is never ask if somebody needs help, always ask if they want help.
Today at C3 Dev Festival by GitNation, we're here in Amsterdam with Swizec Teller, a software engineer, author, and speaker. Swizec has published books on modern web technologies, data visualization, and productivity, and he's trained engineering teams at companies of all sizes. He's made it in his mission to distill 20 years of experience into actionable steps. We'll dive into balancing coding and business, the shift from junior to senior mindset and how to make it smooth, key developer skills for today's market, and the unique experience of a festival-style dev event. My name is Dan, I'm a mobile software engineer with close to 10 years of experience and also a content creator on Instagram and YouTube, posting about mobile app development and software engineering in general. Alright, let's jump into our conversation.
So it's nice to have you here. Thank you for joining, and I'm excited to talk to you about software development and the career in this tech field in general.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, you have a deep expertise in both technical side of building products and on the business side, and I want to ask you, how do you balance like writing code and ensuring a good technical product versus meeting business needs and growing quickly on that side?
I think one of the most interesting things about working at a startup is that you get to really see the business side and how the code that you write impacts the business. One of the things that really sticks in my mind is a CTO a couple of companies ago told me once, Swizz, code quality won't matter if we're dead. Because if the company dies, you delete all of the code and none of it matters. So what I like about that is that is the focus on the business outcomes of the code you're writing. You should only have as much code quality as you need for the stage of your product. Like if you're building a quick prototype to see if an idea works, you don't need to engineer it like you're Google or like you're a large enterprise with a bunch of legal compliance stuff. So you can kind of, like a lot of it is kind of just, it sounds really cliche, but it really is how it goes, is building the plane on your way down. So you jump off a cliff and you start quickly building the plane. That really forces you to prioritize the things that matter and not get bogged down in the details of like the perfect implementation or whatever, because you have a client that wants a feature or you have users that want a feature. It's about how can you quickly get it to them in a way that is good enough, and you can then, because if it is good enough and if it succeeds, you can always fix it later because you're going to get more funding, you're going to get more resources, you can always make things better. So I've seen more products fail because they were over-engineered and people were trying to make it too perfect. Then I've seen products fail because they were poorly built or poorly designed and didn't work.
I think that's a great summary, and it's similar to what I've seen in my experience in building mobile apps. People like to, people sometimes fall into the trap of over-engineering early, and then they don't get to that stage where they actually need the level of engineering they already did because the business didn't grow, as you said, so it doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly.
And the plane comparison is great because, as you said, you need to focus on the important parts, still make it fly, because if it doesn't fly, it doesn't matter, but you have a limited time. So then you quickly have to, build the wings and the things that matter most. So,
and like one of the things about early over-engineering that I've seen is that you will usually get it wrong. And you build the wrong abstractions, and then because you've built those wrong abstractions, it's actually much harder to fix later than if you just built it the straightforward way. until you know what abstractions you actually need.
Right, because it's harder to anticipate in that early stage what will be the abstractions that you
Yeah,
need.
exactly.
And like a follow-up question to that, does it happen often that later, when you have more funding and more resources, you go back and improve what's already working, or you invest those new resources into developing further?
I think that really depends. Like I've had an experience where I joined a Series A company that had user-facing app was built in like jQuery spaghetti. And they were like, and they said, we can't keep working on this. No, we won't be able to hire anyone who wants to work with jQuery in 2020. And it's hard to innovate. And anytime we try to fix a bug, we cause 5 other bugs. So they hired me to come in and rewrite everything in React and kind of piece by piece move it over to React and modern technologies. And that was a good example of that. They had like a plane that was flying, but was starting to not fit the requirements anymore. So it was easier to just throw the Cessna away and build an Airbus, right?
Right.
Because by then we knew what our patients wanted. We had customers, we had we knew the needs, we had more money, and we were able to hire a team that really knew modern technologies and was able to make that transition. So I think that's a good example of that.
Yeah, and great point about also finding developers to work on that code, because as from a business point of view, you can say the code is working, don't touch it, but you still like touch it by building other features around it, and then it's not so exciting for developers, and then it's harder to build a highly skilled team to continue with the product. So
Yeah, exactly. And like it's not just engineers being excited about something. Engineers also have to think about their own career. And if you
Yes.
get hired to work on a legacy stack, it's going to be much harder for you to get the next job. So nobody wants to go into a legacy stack because they know it's legacy. So companies also are forced to move off of legacy so that they can set up their engineers for success later.
Right. And another point I want to add on that is that maybe if you have legacy code, then you will have to compensate financially for a good developer to convince him to join your team, because he will say, all right, maybe I'm not learning anything here, so at least I'm earning more. Versus when you're kind of more up to date with the technologies, and you can also have that as an advantage for the developers joining.
Yeah. Exactly. And
Awesome.
sometimes there's just things you can't do in an old technology.
Yes.
Like building a really complex, modern, like mobile app or web app in jQuery, I think would be extremely difficult. It would actually be really impressive if you can pull it off. So like you have to make sure that the technologies you're using actually fit the problems that you're solving. And as the company grows, as your problems evolve, that also changes. If you look at something like data pipelines, when you're small, it's fine to just export the CSV and upload it somewhere else. But then when you're at Google scale, you need like Hadoop and pipelines and all these crazy things.
So we spoke about engineers and talented engineers joining teams. Did you see a mindset difference between junior developers and senior developers?
The most important thing for a junior is having excitement for the code and enjoying the process of learning. And also, like when hiring, the thing that you look for most in a junior is how coachable they are and how quickly they learn stuff.
Good point.
Whereas in a senior, what you're looking for is kind of the learning aspect is a given. You don't expect a senior to already know everything, because every company's stack is very specific, and you expect every senior to be able to learn basically anything that they need. What you need as a senior is, I think, a more of a pragmatic mindset, and having the ability to look at what is the simplest solution to the business problem that you're solving. Less focus on the code and more focus on why are we building this? Is this the actual thing that we need to build? will this get us where we need? A quote that I like to use is that anyone can build a bridge
Yeah.
that stands,
Okay.
but you need a real engineer to build a bridge that barely stands.
Oh, right.
Which means solving problems within budget and within time, not just building the most biggest, impressivest thing that you can think of.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's similar for building a house. Let's say if you are building houses for different people, you have to adapt to their context and to their budgets, and not just have the one single template and go
Exactly.
place it everywhere. I think that's a skill that's much needed, yeah, for a senior engineer, and also to be able to see the business side, because some of them can be very focused just on the coding and the technical aspect. So yeah, and hopefully juniors can see that in seniors and learn that as they grow.
Yeah, I think one aspect there is that for juniors, like juniors and mid levels, usually the code and the problems they're solving are feel more complex for them because of the level that they're at. So they don't have the capacity to spend on the business side and to focus on those higher level concerns. Whereas when you're senior or above, the coding itself should feel so easy that you have a lot of time and mental capacity left over to think about these higher level strategic things.
Would you add anything, any other skill that's very important for an engineer to thrive in today's landscape and in today's job market?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think adaptability is very important because things are changing faster and faster. And like I said earlier, every company has a slightly different stack, slightly different tooling. I think as a senior, it's important to focus on the concepts behind everything rather than like on specific implementations. So if you look at different frameworks, when you kind of squint a little, they're all doing pretty much the same things in very much the same ways. So if you understand those concepts instead of learning just a specific framework, it's much easier to then switch frameworks depending on which company you're at or what project you're working on, because you kind of know what to look for, and you're not learning how something works. You're just learning what is this framework's implementation of the general concept.
Yeah, good point. I kind of seen a similar thing between frameworks for mobile development, where if you learn the first one that you're trying to learn like really well and understand the basics and how it works, then it's kind of easier to understand how the others are doing it, because you can see like the differences and similarities, and then you can anticipate, like, I mean, you can see for which type of apps is one or the other more a good match. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
great.
I think it's very useful to learn if you have the chance to learn a couple of different paradigms of solving similar problems, because that helps you learn the concept. So like if you started with objective programming, it's a good idea to do some things in a functional language.
Functional
Or
programming,
if you've been doing mostly mobile development, it's a good idea to try doing some web just to see where the similarities are and how they're solving similar things. You can cross-pollinate a lot of those ideas, I think.
For sure. Yeah, that's something I did between iOS and Android in the beginning. I totally agree that like learning some web development also like adds to that experience. And so we were talking about skills that engineers should have. Do you think it's important to focus on something specific early in your career, like as a junior, to have kind of a smooth path towards a good senior developer?
So as a junior, what to focus on to have a smooth path to senior? It's been so long since I've been a junior developer that I can't really remember what I did, but I think what I've seen work for junior developers is to join a team as early as possible. Personally, I think I stayed working on my own for too long, because when you join a team, especially if you join a team that is interested in mentoring you, you can learn a lot from the people around you. So my experience was mostly being thrown in the deep end and having to figure things out on my own. which really worked for me because I enjoy that, but it was also extremely painful. Whereas if you join a team and they kind of feed you problems and help you solve them, you can learn much faster that way. You're not getting stuck on specific things. And you're like, if you get stuck, you can get unblocked. So I guess what I would say, the best thing you can do as a junior is to get very comfortable with asking for help. Do the homework. Don't just immediately give up when something goes wrong, but try a few things. And if you're not making progress in a certain amount of time, that depends on what you're working on, go and ask for help. Pull somebody, ask them, hey, can we pair program on this? Not just consult the internet, but talk to actual people who know how to do your thing in your specific context, and can help you out. And especially when pairing, always make sure that the junior is driving and the senior is watching, not the other way around, because that forces juniors to think ahead and to try to solve it and get help rather than taking a passive role and just observing.
Right. I think it's a more active learning because they have to do it and they go through the process instead of just watching it. And it's like watching a tutorial without actually implementing it yourself. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's much better if you learn it that way. Do you think that remote work is, in this context of a junior like joining a team, do you think it's a big difference between joining a team physically in an office versus joining a remote team?
I think the main difference I've seen, especially, so I've only experienced this remote work when I was the senior and we had juniors on the team. I think as a junior or anyone really on a remote team, you have to be more proactive, because when I was working at the office and I was mentoring someone, you're kind of like, you're working and you can see like steam coming out of their ears and you're like, hey, yo, what's up? It looks
Right.
like you're struggling. Like
You see the body language.
yeah, like, can I help you? Whereas in remote, you don't see that. They have to be much more cognizant of like, oh yeah, shit, I'm actually stuck. I need to go ask for help.
Right.
So I think that proactivity is much more important in a remote context, because otherwise you're just going to be struggling on your own and in your bedroom or whatever, and nobody's going to know.
Right. And then you can find that balance that you mentioned earlier, because on one side of the spectrum you have someone who maybe asks for help too early, like not trying enough. And on the other end you have someone who's stuck for hours or multiple days and doesn't ask for help. So you kind of want to be in the middle, and it's maybe a bit easier to find that middle if you're in the office. But of course, I think joining a remote team is still better than working on your own as a junior, as a beginner.
Yeah. And I would also add that that is a skill that seniors, especially if you want to be mentoring, that is a skill you can develop as a senior, is recognizing who on your team asks for help too early and who on your team waits too long. So when I work with people who ask too early, I like to kind of ignore their questions for a little bit, and then I see that 20 minutes later they actually solve it already themselves, kind of give them that space to struggle. And with people who don't ask for help, me as the senior proactively be like, hey, you haven't said anything on Slack in like 3 hours. Are you stuck? Do you want some help? A small trick that I learned is never ask if somebody needs help, always ask if they want help.
Oh, okay.
Because it's
That's a
easier
good
to
one.
say that you want help than it is that you need help.
Help. Right. That's a good one. Yeah, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. And a context that it's helpful for you as a senior to develop that skill that you were mentioning, like observing who and asks when, is maybe if you're part of mentoring an internship and then you have multiple juniors kind of at the same level at the same time, and then you can see like each one of them, how do they like working, and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's great. How do you like C3 so far? What do you think about the vibe and everything here?
C3 has been really great so far. I really enjoyed the workshop yesterday. I went to a couple of the career workshops, and it was really cool how the 2-hour workshop format, I was skeptical at first, but it works really well, because you have enough time to do something focused, but it's not so long that everyone gets tired, which is really cool. Because I've been to all-day workshops, and by the end of the day, everyone is just brain dead.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
And the conference itself has a really good vibe. The venue here is just amazing. And I didn't stay long at the party last night because jet lag. But when I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning, I think the party was still going because I could hear some bass, like some deep bass in my hotel room, and I don't think that was my neighbors playing on a loudspeaker.
Yeah, indeed, this is something special about C3, that it blends not only this part of presentations and networking, which is very helpful for people joining conferences, but it also adds this new thing with the festival and with the after party.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something that sets it apart.
And it's really cool how it's, I think, 3 conferences back to back.
Yes, 3 conferences back to back.
So you get to talk to a lot of people from just other areas where it's like I came here for C3, but I got to meet all of my React friends yesterday because they were here for React Summit.
Yeah, actually,
And they
me
were
too.
telling me about all the cool things they learned at JS Nation. So that was really great.
That was exactly how it was for me, because I also got here like yesterday for the React Summit and didn't get to JS Nation, but yeah, it was great to also like talk to people who are working on technologies that are not exactly what I'm doing. As we discussed earlier, maybe get some ideas, some insights that could be applied to mobile development in my case, or vice versa. So.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about the networking side at the conference? I mean, maybe someone who joins like their first or second conference is a bit shy of going and asking speakers some questions or getting into conversations with other people. Do you have any suggestions for people joining conferences for the first or second time on this side?
I think it's like just go out there and talk to people. We're all nerds here. We're all part of the same tribe. Everyone is socially awkward, so you can just go and talk to everyone. The best thing I've learned about networking and talking to people is that for them, you're just one of the hundred of people that they met at the conference.
All right.
So you remember awkwardness a lot more than they do. So like if something's not going well, you can just walk away and go talk to someone else.
Yeah, because you'll be just one of those 100 plus people they talk to. And of course, that not going well is maybe you run out of ideas or like something like this, because eventually, since we're all like developers and people working in tech, I'm sure we have a lot of empathy for each other. And we've also been there, like being shy and not getting into conversations. So
yeah, like I've never met an unfriendly person at a conference. You know, we're all here to chat.
Right, exactly. And do you think the after party and festival side help on that?
It's hard to talk to people when everyone is sitting down and looking at the presenter. But when everyone's kind of walking around, listening to music, dancing, etc., it's a lot easier to strike up a conversation.
Swiss, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this discussion, and it was really nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks again for having me.
Sure.